I never, in the 9 years that I had with my dad post-accident before he died, was jealous of my other friends whose dads could walk around or throw them a ball or drive them to school. All I have to do for my kid to grow up well-adjusted and hopefully love me is be there and love them and believe in them, because that's what I felt from both of my parents. It didn't matter that I couldn't do certain things with my dad because he was there and I knew that he loved me. And what else do you need?
So I think I want to start with you two, Robert and Lizzie. What drew you to want to tell this story? And what did you find most compelling about Christopher as an actor, an activist, and as a human?
Well, I think I'm a documentary film producer, and throughout the last 20 years, I've always tried to make films that feel big and commercial and global, but have something profound or political or sometimes quite radical to say. It's so hard to get films financed and to get them made that I really believe each one needs to count and really needs to mean something in the world. And so when the opportunity came to work on this film, it was just an absolute no-brainer, because you've got the huge appeal of Superman, you've got this amazing family story, but at its core, it's about love and family and legacy and reflecting a different way of living with disability and things. So it was just an amazing opportunity. And what was, even more amazing, because we do meet people, who are interested in making films and families and so on. Once we met the three children, it was just the level of intelligence, emotional intelligence, and the trust that they were willing to put in us as filmmakers was almost unprecedented. And it's just been such an honor to work with you, Will. So thank you.
Thank you. Likewise. Thank you.
Yeah, and what drew me to it was, this is a well-known story, but it's told through archival footage. And the whole project was actually originated by an archival producer, Daniel Kilroy, who had the idea to contact the Reeve family and ask them if they have any tapes, any footage. And it turned out they had a wealth of material, and it was in boxes, labeled up. And so that is a gift to filmmakers.
Absolutely. That's actually leads right into my next question, because one of the things that I found particularly powerful was the fact that the film was narrated by Christopher's voice. And I wonder, can you talk about the choice to use Christopher for the narration for the film?
Well, I think we were lucky enough that he had written those two memoirs, autobiographies, and recorded them. So it's a huge asset for the film. And I think the directors decided pretty early on that would be a core component of the film, and who better to tell his own story than him. And it's so powerful and moving to hear that across the film. So yeah, we were just so lucky with the family had this archive. There was a lot of commercial archive of Christopher Reeve as well. And so that combination with the interviews, which you've seen and are so moving and so emotional and kind of intimate, we just had the building blocks for this film.
That's great. Yeah, thank you so much. And Will, you can jump in anytime you want to.
Well, I didn't make it. I didn't make the film, questions. So these questions aren't really directed toward me. I'm just in it.
Since we're talking to a room full of actors, I feel I would be remiss not to bring up Christopher's motto: try, fail, try harder. He says in the film, you say he didn't do anything half-ass. And I think actors, and Christopher was an actor, so actors have a similar adage borrowed from Samuel Beckett, who I know your dad greatly admired, which is basically risk, fail, risk again, fail better. And so I particularly resonated with that. And it seems like your dad applied those principles to all aspects of his life with intensity. And the fact that he was an activist before he became disabled. And so I feel like one of the things that I was struck by was the fact that he said that his early life was on shifting sands, which I found so interesting because it seemed to prepare him for a life as an artist, but also offered him the constitution of what he would need to rebuild his life as a disabled person. And so I wonder if any of the three of you can talk about a bit about the evolution of Christopher and your family made from what he lost to focusing on the contributions that he could make to the world as a disabled activist and an artist.
That's a heavy question. I do think that a constant in his life from childhood all the way through the end was his singular determination and purpose. Whatever task was in front of him, whether it was navigating an uncertain home life or pursuing a career in the arts or flying across the Atlantic Ocean by himself or teaching me how to ride a bike just by telling me what to do. No matter what the task was, he was singularly focused on it and uniquely committed to success. You talk about try, fail, try harder. That was his life. You put it so eloquently. And that applied to his activism. I think especially when after he was injured, and as you heard my sister say that that spinal cord injury research was sort of the graveyard of neuroscience. He was running into like innumerable dead ends while paralyzed, and he's trying to figure out who to call, where to go, where money should be directed, who he needs to lobby to get help. And he was all while paralyzed, and he's figuring out how to do that. And he's figuratively banging on every door that he can. And he had practice at that as the head of the Creative Coalition for years prior to that. Activism wasn't something thrust upon him when it served him. It wasn't. He wasn't like a convenient advocate. It was part of his, as you say, constitution. It was who he was. He was someone who believed that if you have the ability to help someone, you then have a moral obligation to do so. So when he became an activist for spinal cord injury, sure, he was helping himself in this case, but he understood that he was the face of a cause and a movement that impacted millions of people and still does today. So that was just another data point in a life of working singularly focused at whatever was in front of him. Mm-hmm. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. Okay. Yes, completely. Yes, it does. Back to you, Robert and Lizzie. The film does not shy away from addressing the stark realities of our broken healthcare system, as well as the polarizing aspects of Christopher's comments early on about seeking a cure. I was wondering what was important, why was it important to you and to you possibly, Will, and your family to include that as well?
Well, we worked with a disability consultant on this film who had a similar injury to Chris, and is also event-dependent quadriplegic. And what we learned a lot from him about the medical model and the social model of disability. I've just made another film about disability as well, and I think what the Reeve Foundation ended up doing, and you can speak more about this than me, is trying to address both ways. Helping people live with their disability, but then also trying to find cures for certain conditions.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a fraught. It's hard to even distill down into it. This is like an ongoing conversation over generations about the role that like cure plays, and we get into that. Or they get into that, I should say, in the film. But we got into it in our lives, certainly. And Absolutely. I think that what my dad used to say is like, spend a minute or 10 minutes or an hour perfectly still. Don't shift your weight. Don't scratch your ear. Don't take a sip of water. And then tell me that you wouldn't want to find a cure for that. Mm-hmm. So that was my experience growing up. In our household, it was like, let's fix this for him and for everybody else forever. Mm-hmm. Let's live in a world of empty wheelchairs. And there was no there was no more nuance to the discussion than that, at least within our home. And I only realized as I grew up, and honestly, as I watched the final product of this film, to have it sort of played back to me like, oh yeah, that's not necessarily everybody's perspective. And that's okay too. Yeah. We shouldn't discount other perspectives, of course. And I'm glad that that's a discussion point in this film. I think something that was essential to my brother and sister and to me when we agreed to allow the filmmakers to go make the film was sort of our parting request was be as honest and unflinching as you can possibly be. And then we came back and they're like, oh, you were for sure. And that was what we wanted, because I always hesitate. You know, my dad's been dead 20 years, and people still to this day be like, oh, he would say this or he would think that or whatever. And it's touching, and I know what you mean, and I appreciate it. I do. I'm grateful for all that. But we can't know exactly what he would say or what he would feel or what he would think about anything. I am 99.9% certain that he would have said, make the most honest film about me you possibly can. I am not perfect. No one is. And that is the end result here. And we're very glad. And that, to your point about the uncomfortable discussions around disability, that was essential to his life and thus to this film.
Mm-hmm. Great.
And, you know, we believe that documentaries are at their best when they are truthful and when they are authentic. And so that was a cornerstone of the film. And, you know, the three Reeve children were so straightforward at the beginning, saying they did not want it to be a puff piece. And they wanted it, as Will said, to be a kind of 360 look at Christopher Reeve. And I think that that's also what resonates, because you have the different sides of him and you feel like you really get to know him in a way that audiences weren't able to before. And just to say, yeah, I mean, the children did not have creative control over the film. I think some people assume because there's this age of like celebrity documentaries where a lot of people do, and that wasn't the case. And they gave us the tapes, the archive tapes, some of which they actually hadn't seen themselves and didn't know what was on them. Mm-hmm. They sat for these interviews, which they agreed to be very honest and open. And then for about 6 months, we went away and edited, and it was terrifying. Showed them the film. We were sitting in London on Zoom waiting, and they were 25 minutes late to come on the Zoom to tell us what they thought, and we were like in a mad panic.
We were screwing with them. We were sitting in a screening room like in Midtown. We loved it. We had like a couple minor like factual notes about, oh, actually you should change that for accuracy. But overall, we were like, that was lovely, and holy shit, what an emotional experience. Yeah. Let's not jump on the Zoom just yet. Let's we
were like, oh my God, they hate
me,
it.
my brother, my sister, Connor Schell, who's one of the executive producers, and we were just hanging out. I think our conversation drifted off to like what good restaurants we thought we might go to as a group. Like we were totally, and then we were like, oh, we should tell them we like it. And but that speaks to our comfort, our level of comfort with the filmmaking team. It took such a long time to get this going, and we had countless Zooms and fragmented in-person meetings. If one of them was over here, or if one of us was over in London, et cetera. And to finally, like after months and months and even like years of getting to know each other, and you guys getting to know the material, and us getting to a level of comfort that we could send you off into uncharted territory, it worked, and it has worked, and it's now the sort of the fun part is getting to reunite with this out in the world and getting to see you all interact with it while we get to, you know, have drinks and hang out. And so it's been a wonderful ride that I've just been glad. And I speak for my siblings. We're just passengers on it. It's been really great, because this is a scary thing, right? But it's been incredibly rewarding. I wouldn't be here if I didn't like approve of that.
But there were some feelings you guys had when you saw that first cut, and they improved the film. You know, I think.
Well, yeah, we think we know what we're doing.
You know,
too.
a kind of a thought that obviously none of us had been through that. So I think you were able to say that there was a lot of joy in the house after the accident, and even after Chris died, actually, and that you wanted the film to reflect that joy and love that the family had. And that was a wonderful note, because it's true. And this kind of really moving section at the end was actually inspired by that feedback.
Always choose joy if you can. That's just it's a note in everything. Taxes, there's joy in that, right?
Those are words to live by. This is so great, because I feel like I don't even have to ask these questions because they're all flowing in. My next question was, in telling Christopher's story, you chose to tell Dana's story as well. And why it was also important to include her vision for the foundation, which was different from his, to what we were just speaking to, the search for a cure versus what she called, which I loved, today's care. Mm-hmm. And it's so beautiful. Why did you think it was important to? I mean, I think we all know the answer to that.
I think it was one of the most surprising things at the beginning, because obviously we knew the basics about Christopher Reeve, but we didn't know about Dana Reeve, and it was this amazing discovery. And I think all of us feel that our relationships are a little bit. Who could have a love affair like that? Like this incredible love that they had, and that was just a core. I mean, Dana is a huge part of the film and was from very early on. Our directors, Ian and Peter. They just saw it as this love story between the two of them. And of course, in the world, there are a lot of carers as well. So it was really important to reflect the huge impact that has on people, but the way that Dana kind of carried it with such grace and joy, in fact, mm-hmm. Going back to your point.
Lizzie says that they were surprised and it was a great discovery. I was just waiting for them to get to that point. I was like, okay, they'll figure it out eventually. Because of course we had no insight into how the filmmaking process was going. But then as we learned, of course, my mom was like, she's instrumental. She was the nucleus of the family. There is no Christopher Reeve story without Dana Reeve. She is the heart of this film. She was the heart of our family. She is both of my parents are my motivating factor, role models in the sky, whatever you want to call it, to this day. But her grace and grit and the combination of those two, it's an antidote to a lot of what ails any person and society generally. And to have her in the film, she deserves her own thing. Absolutely. At some point. And that, she deserves everything, and I am nothing without her. And so to have her featured in the film at all was essential. But I'm glad that I didn't have to knock too many heads together and watching a final cut being like, where's my mom? They figured it out, because how could you not?
Yeah.
I think the directors, Peter and Ian, when they saw the footage and the intimacy of the footage, because it all takes place in the home, and that's because it was filmed by Matthew. I think Matthew always had a camera, and that's why you get the sense of family and love and intimacy from the footage.
Yeah, and it's very clear that this is a love story to both of your parents. Yeah. I mean, it's beautiful. The last question I want to ask you, Robert and Lizzie, is why was it important to you as producers to also shine a light on Christopher's work in film after the accident?
I mean, it was just a huge part of who he was, this drive to succeed, but to be creative was so important to him. And, he had these incredible achievements after his accident, which they would be meaningful even today, but back in those days, it's even more meaningful. So it was just a crucial part of his story and what he achieved afterwards, and very inspiring. And of course, Brooke Ellison, who we made a film about, and we were able to interview her. Very sadly, she passed away before we finished the film, so she wasn't able to see it. But the film is dedicated in her memory, but also Christopher and Dana, and her family came with Sundance or the New York premiere and saw the film and found it incredibly moving. But it was just, he achieved so much, in those 9 years. It's really astounding.
Yeah, he did. All right, on to you, Will. Okay, as we were just talking about this being a love letter to both of your parents, your mom and dad were clearly a formidable team and a powerful force for good in the world. Yeah. I mean, that's very clear. What are memories of the two of them, and what are some of your memories of the two of them and the partnership that they shared? Whatever you feel comfortable sharing.
Well, we've extended this Q&A for 7 hours.
Yes.
If you'd like to order dinner, I'll give you my credit card. Too many memories to count, but to distill it down, I think of dinner in the kitchen. My mom cooked and sang while she did it. My dad sat at the head of the table, I would sit next to him. We would watch a game on TV, but never during dinner because you can't watch TV during dinner. And we would talk about everything. My day at school, crushes I had on so-and-so, politics, philosophy, lots of sports, whales. We both loved whales. The animal, and I guess the country, but the animal. Never, ever, ever would we talk about medicine. It wasn't allowed. My mom forbade it.
Good.
And I remember that's what I remember, just being close together, being present in each other's lives. I never, in the 9 years that I had with my dad post-accident before he died, was jealous of my other friends whose dads could walk around or throw them a ball or drive them to school. Because while those are important formative moments in a father-son relationship or a parent-child relationship, that is not the essence of what the relationship really is in terms of your own growth as a human being and what sustains you into adulthood and into your own parenting, which I am not lucky enough to be a parent yet. But one day I know that all I have to do for my kid to grow up well-adjusted and hopefully love me is be there and love them and believe in them, because that's what I felt from both of my parents. It didn't matter that I couldn't do certain things with my dad because he was there and I knew that he loved me. And what else do you need? So that's what I remember, being loved.
Thank you for saying that. I'm sorry, I'm getting choked up. That means so much. Now, 20 years on, how do you view your dad's legacy, both on and off the screen?
I view it as it's not over. And this film is
testament,
is part of that. Like, it's the Renaissance. We're back, 20 years on. I think a whole new generation of fans, whether it's people who like Superman or people who found inspiration from my dad or my mom's love story or story of perseverance over the obstacles they faced. They either remember them from back then or they're learning about them now for the first time. And I think that will only continue to keep my parents' names alive and legacy alive. And I think that heroism has no expiration date. And these were two heroes that I was lucky enough to call parents, but the world was lucky enough to call their own in some way. So I think that the legacy has been written to a degree, but will continue hopefully forever. And if I can play a small part in perpetuating that legacy, happy to do it.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And what do you think your dad would see as his greatest legacy?
I would hope he would say Matthew, Alexandra, and me, but I don't know. Maybe that's asking a little too much. But no, I think on a serious note, I think his legacy touches so many different areas. He would believe in his legacy as a performer, as an actor, both on the stage and on screen. I think he would be proud of his advocacy work, both prior to and post-accident. And I think he would be proud, I know he was proud of the advances that he was at the bleeding edge of in spinal cord injury research and advocacy.
That's great. So why is the foundation so important to you and to your siblings and to the world?
To me and my siblings, it's a perpetuation of my parents' legacy, the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation. We are the leading organization to find cures for spinal cord injuries and provide quality of life care for people living or impacted by paralysis. So there's that. That's like the logistical part of it all. That it's a real tangible thing that helps millions of people. But it also represents everything that my parents believed in: giving more than you take, finding that moral obligation or using that moral obligation to help people because you can for good. And it's a way that I can, if I'm ever feeling too big for my britches, or if I'm feeling like I'm somebody special, I can go do work on behalf of the foundation, and it reminds me of my small, insignificant place in the universe and how insignificant my problems are versus others. And I can make even 1% of a difference in somebody's day, and that compounds over a lifetime. And that is, it's my greatest honor to represent my family name anywhere I go, but especially in the arena of the foundation. So we're proud to be a part of it. And I'm actually right now we're on like a Zoom board meeting for our Q4 board meeting as we speak. I got like an excused absence from the executive session. I was like, I gotta go do a Q&A, bye. Just hung up in the lobby out here. So thanks. That's why I'm talking so much, because I don't want to go back on it. They are boring. It's amazing doing all this legacy work and carrying on the blah, 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 but it's like talking about budgets and shit is boring. So,
Well, I have one more question for all three of you. What made this the right time to tell this story?
I would say the world's pretty dark. We are facing a lot of challenges, climate catastrophe, and I won't even talk about politics. But, people need uplifting, inspiring, and hopeful messages. And we didn't know when we started this film that it would be that. Yes, I feel like it is sad, but everybody I know who's seen it, it makes you feel complete. It makes you feel whole. It kind of gives you hope in other, your own human beings, and like makes you value the people around you. So that's why I think it was an amazing time for this film.
I can't say it better than that. We've just seen a huge response to the film. We've seen it with audiences all over the world, and people are really moved by it, and it lingers on in their memories. So I'm just glad that people have responded that way.
And for our piece, there was no strategy on our end from Matthew, Alexander, or myself. We had talked about it, like, on the occasional inbound inquiry we got about one project or another. Just, we have our own busy lives and jobs and families and stuff. And we're not professional offspring, we just, we haven't been sitting in a box for 20 years. Like, hey, we're here to tell our father's story. Pay attention. So we met, like, Daniel Kilroy, the archivist, reached out to us, or to Matthew, I think, and then like that started the ball rolling. And we really liked and believed in this team and the many others who were involved in making this, and it just felt right. And then it is serendipitous that it was released on basically the 20-year anniversary of our dad's passing. That wasn't intentional. We are very calculating in many ways, but that wasn't one of them. And so it's been a dream to be associated with this. I feel weird. I've been so grateful for months now for everyone who's reached out with messages or said hello in person, congratulating me on the film. And I say thank you, but I want to caveat it with, like, I didn't really have that much to do with it. I sat for an interview and believed in the team when the ball got rolling. But other than that, I've just been as proud and as enthralled in the process as anyone else. I've not had my sleeves rolled up getting in there. I've been a cheerleader from the sidelines, but I'm very, very proud of what this is and hopefully will be over the coming months and years and hopefully generations.
Well, I think that's a perfect way to end. Thank you all so much for the film and for being here and sharing your time with us.
Thank you.
And sharing your family with us, Will. Thanks, everybody, for being here.
Thank you.